He was on the ground, on his knees, alone at an empty train station, 3 a.m. His wallet, empty. His faith, almost gone too. And in that moment, Miles realized either he got up or he'd die inside. But he didn't get up on his own. He did the only thing he still could. He prayed. For real. No fancy words, just him and God. That's where it all began. Not with a visible miracle, but with a decision. I'm going to walk by faith, even if I can't see the road. No one saw when he sold his phone to pay for the course. No one saw the silent, tearful prayers. No one saw him fall again, but still choose to keep going, trusting that God was still with him. Today, Miles works with what he loves. He's not rich. He's not famous, but he lives with purpose, with peace. He pays his bills, helped his mom get out of debt, and every Saturday, he teaches what he learned, starting each class with a prayer. He didn't become a guru. He became a testimony, because he realized that faith that stays in theory doesn't change a thing, but faith that gets up changes everything. And it all started that night, on that floor. This is the story of how everything changed, and maybe it's exactly the story God wanted you to hear today. Miles wasn't lazy. He woke up early, helped around the house. He was always trying, but never getting anywhere. Every day felt the same. He'd wake up in a rush, go to a job he didn't like, come home exhausted, scroll on his phone, and fall asleep frustrated. Deep down, he believed things could get better. He just didn't know how, and that was killing him. The thing is, Miles confused faith with passive hope. He was waiting for a miracle, waiting for something on the outside to change. But the change he needed most was on the inside. He was still trapped, not by change you can see, but by old paradigms, thoughts like, I'm not good enough. No one in my family ever made it. Why would I? God blesses other people. I think he forgot about me. These thoughts weren't just in his mind. They were planted in his soul. And when your mind becomes a prisoner, everything else locks up too. Miles didn't realize that. He just felt this weight he couldn't explain. He started things, but didn't finish, made plans, then self-sabotaged. He prayed, but didn't really believe anything would change. He was frozen on the inside. Faith was there, but it was asleep. And while faith sleeps, life stands still. He wanted to move forward, but it was like being in a car with the parking brake on. He had the strength. He had the direction, but his thoughts were holding everything back. In Miles's mind, failure felt so familiar that success seemed dangerous. And that's when he started to realize the problem wasn't God. It wasn't the world. It was the way he believed in the lies he'd been told his whole life. Miles didn't need a new job or some magical opportunity. He needed to wake up inside, and that only started to happen when he realized faith isn't a feeling. Faith is movement, even when you're scared, even with no guarantees, even when you don't know if it'll work. Faith that doesn't move. Paralyzes, but faith that confronts old paradigms. It's the kind of faith that unlocks destiny. Turning points don't always come like lightning from the sky. Sometimes it's just a simple phrase that hits you like a punch. That's what happened to Miles. He was at home on an ordinary day. A video was playing in the background on his phone. Not even something he'd searched for. But then a line came through like it was aimed right at him. Faith without action is just a pretty idea. He froze because that was exactly it. He had faith, but it was faith stuck in place. Faith that kept asking, but never moved. That night, Miles didn't cry. He didn't say some fancy prayer. He just stayed quiet. And for the first time, he faced the truth. He didn't need more promises. He needed courage. God hadn't forgotten him, but maybe Miles had been using faith as an excuse to keep waiting. That's when it clicked. Faith without steps is just philosophy. Faith without risk isn't faith at all. He had two options: keep waiting for things to change, or stand up and walk, even if he couldn't see the way. And that's when he made the most honest prayer of his life. He didn't ask for blessings. He didn't ask for open doors. He just said, God, I'm going. Help me keep going when I feel like giving up. That was it. No skies split open. No instant answers. But something inside him lined up. For the first time, Miles slept in peace. Not because things had changed, but because he had decided to change. That was the beginning. And beginnings don't shout. They whisper. Miles still didn't know what to do. He was still scared. But now, he was in motion. And faith in motion can't be stopped. The next day wasn't magical. Miles woke up with the same cheap pillow, the same cracked ceiling, the same overdue phone bill. But something inside him wasn't the same anymore. He didn't know exactly what to do. But he knew that doing nothing was no longer an option. He opened up an old spreadsheet with ideas for courses, stared at one of them for over 20 minutes, took a deep breath, and did something he'd never really done before. He acted on faith. He sold his phone, took the money and signed up. A basic technical course, 2 months long. But for him, it was like jumping into a dark ocean. He started studying at an internet cafe, slept less but felt more at peace. No one was clapping. No one was posting motivational quotes for him, but he felt like he was moving, and every small movement was a miracle. The miracle of waking up and not feeling defeated. The miracle of pushing through the routine without complaining. The miracle of staying firm when no one was watching. Miles didn't become a new person overnight. He still had days where he wanted to disappear, still had days where he wondered if God was really listening. But instead of letting the doubt stop him, he used it to keep going. If I'm scared, it's because I'm going somewhere I've never been. He repeated that like a mantra, and every new step was another prayer. Not with words, but with action. His faith wasn't spoken anymore. It was lived. And when faith is lived, God responds. Not with magic, but with direction. And that direction started to show him he wasn't alone. Here's what nobody tells you. Even when you finally start doing the right thing, life still tests you. Miles found that out early on. After taking that first step, he thought things would start falling into place. But what came next was silence. He thought that by obeying, everything would just work out. But he realized that obedience doesn't cancel the process. It just opens the path. In the first month of his course, Miles thought about quitting 4 times. He had headaches from hunger, felt embarrassed about not having proper clothes, was scared he might be investing in something that wasn't even the right path. But every day he chose to keep going. That was faith, not the kind that jumps and shouts, the kind that bleeds in silence. Miles learned that real faith is stubborn. Some days he prayed with words, other days he just cried. But every night before falling asleep, he'd say the same thing. God, just don't let me go back. And God didn't. Little helps started to appear, things that seemed like coincidence, but they weren't. A classmate shared his lunch. A teacher mentioned a scholarship. A neighbor lent him an old laptop. Miles understood that miracles don't always shine. Sometimes they come with dust, pain, and silence. God digging deep into your soul to build a foundation that success won't be able to shake. But slowly, he began to notice something different. He was still struggling, still lacking things, but now he had a strength that wasn't his own. Something inside him wouldn't let him quit. That was grace. He learned that God isn't just the one who parts the sea. God is the one who teaches you to swim while the sea's still closed. Miles started to see that the process wasn't punishment, it was refining. Each day of persistence, even without results, was a seed, and without realizing it, he was already reaping because he was becoming someone no longer driven by what he felt, but by what he believed. Because on the inside, you've already started winning. 2 years went by. Miles didn't become famous. He didn't get rich. He didn't buy a house with an ocean view. But today, he lives in a place of his own, pays his bills on time, and most importantly, he lives with peace. After the course, he landed an internship. After the internship came a job offer. And even though he couldn't believe it, he got promoted. Not because he was the best, but because he stayed. When everyone else gave up, he stayed. Miles now works doing what he loves. He fixes systems, solves problems, builds solutions. And the most ironic part? He teaches. On Saturdays, he volunteers to teach in a small community space. Not to get applause, but because someone once helped him when he had nothing. And before each class, he prays. Quietly, with his eyes closed and a grateful heart. His mom's no longer in debt. His younger sister got into college. And every time Miles visits that old train station where he once fell to his knees, he remembers what he said that night. God, just don't let me go back. And God didn't. Miles still feels fear, still has bad days. But now he knows the way, not the path to success, the path of faith in action. Because he understands now that miracles aren't just made of light, they're made of sweat, of pain, and of steps. Miles didn't become a superhero. He became whole, someone who knows where he came from, who remembers what it felt like to fall, and never forgets who picked him back up. His life isn't perfect, but now it's his. And every day he lives with the certainty that the power he'd been searching for on the outside had always been in his hands, because God put it there. Maybe you're exactly where Miles once was, feeling stuck, frozen, carrying a tired kind of faith, one that believes in God but doubts yourself. Maybe you pray and think he's not listening, but he is. And maybe God's answer isn't a miracle falling from the sky. Maybe God's answer is this video. Maybe he's just waiting for one thing, for you to get up, not because you're ready, but because faith begins where comfort ends. Miles didn't know what he was doing when he took that first step, He just knew that staying still was no longer an option. And maybe today, it's your turn. You don't need to sell everything. You don't need to make big promises. You just need to move. One small step, one small choice. Faith is like a seed. You plant it and trust. Trust that God will water it. Miles fell many times, but with every fall, he got back up with more clarity. That the power had always been there. And today, that same truth is for you. The power is in your hands. Faith that doesn't act paralyzes. Faith that walks transforms. Don't wait to feel strong. Start while you're still weak. Because when you walk by faith, God walks with you. And maybe this is your empty train station at 3 a.m. But remember, that's exactly where everything can change.